Half an hour later, Alex was sorry too. Sorry that he'd been unable to change Aries' mind, that was. Why? The voice in Alex's mind demanded. Couldn't the ram see how foolish it was to enter tonight's competition? Why did he insist on humiliating himself? And worse, what would happen after he failed tonight? And let me tell you, this was no small worry when you've seen what a sulking ram can do with a pile of dung. Having been born and brought up in Athens, a city famed for its philosophers and thinkers, Alex has always been taught to figure out with his brain. And up until now, it had worked. But as Alex began to realise, the clever old Greeks who'd worked out the distance to the moon had never had anything to do as tricky as to try to stop a ram that would do anything, however stupid, to find his fleece and feel special and fabulous again. Leaning against the moonlit bars of Chimera's cage, Alex sighed, trying to ignore the distant sound of laughter ringing out through the trees from the pavilion, hoping it wasn't directed at Aries. You should have gone with him, muttered a voice. Alex held his lantern to the bars, letting the candlelight spill onto Chimera, the monster with a lion's head and body, the head of a goat halfway down its back and a viper for a tail. Slumped on the floor, it lay snoozing, mostly because while its snake's eyes were shut, the goat was wide awake and staring disdainfully at him, waiting for a reply. To watch him make a fool of himself, said Alex. The lion threw back its head and yawned. Bleh, sputtered the goat, spitting out a mouthful of mane. Do you mind? I was having a private conversation with Alex. Is it breakfast time? Muttered the snake tail, sleepily rising from the floor. No, it's not, snapped the goat. She pushed her head through the bars and brought her mouth too close to Alex's face that he could smell the chewed grass on her breath. I'd have gone without him. No, you wouldn't, growled the lion, because I wouldn't have moved my paws. Like Alex, I have common sense. Common sense, is it? Sniffed the goat. What about courage? Look at us monsters moping around all day, miserable as a wet Tuesday in Tartarus, because those glorified bullies are being celebrated tonight. Isn't it about time us fabulous creatures stopped sulking and did something fabulous for a change? Fabulous? The lion slapped down a giant paw. What's fabulous about Aries landing belly down, bottom up, at the first hurdle? Alex winced at the thought. The goat bleated furiously. You and Alex are so sure that Aries will lose, aren't you? Of course he will, said Alex calmly. He's a ram up against the Greek heroes. But sometimes things don't go the way you expect, replied the goat, tilting her head provocatively. Don't forget what happened to the hero who killed us. Alex thought back to the Bellerophon, the man who killed Chimera whilst riding Pegasus, the winged horse. As they galloped away through the skies, a gadfly had stung Pegasus' haunch, causing the horse to buck, throwing Bellerophon into the thorn bush that blinded him. Or Heracles, added the snake sadly. He was only a baby when the goddess Hera dropped my two great python Uncles into his cot. He strangled them both with his tiny fists. Flies and heroes, thought Alex, babies and snakes. Despite telling himself that they were freakily one-off events, he couldn't ignore the tiny spark of anxiety kindling in his mind. Rams and Argonauts. It was ridiculous, no. It was impossible to imagine that Aries could win, wasn't it? For an animal used to scrambling up mountainsides to beat the fittest Greeks who'd ever lived, for the first time Aries had raced back into the zoo that afternoon. Alex considered what if, by some mad whim of the fates, Aries actually came first. It would be amazing, he knew, unable to stop the warm feeling of pride coursing through him. Then he remembered what it would lead to and felt his skin freeze. He'd be stumbling around some modern city, surrounded by strangers, he said, speaking out his thoughts out loud. But he didn't even survive ancient Greece, Alex continued, feeling his voice waver with panic. He wouldn't last 5 minutes. Not on his own, said the goat. Not even with Athena's help, added the snake, reminding Alex of the tradition where Athena always gave a Greek on a quest something to help. I mean, what's the use of magical capes or winged sandals to Aries when he can't tie them on? Maybe she could lend him the Spartan army instead, sneered the lion. Alex fixed him with a cold stare. Well, muttered the lion, pausing to lick a giant paw. I mean, all this fuss just for Aries to end up as some earth person's dinner. But that'd be terrible, said Alex, his voice thin with panic. Not necessarily, said the lion. I expect his mutton's a bit on the tough side by now, but he'd still make lovely moussaka. When you're quite finished, snapped the goat. She turned back to Alex and narrowed her eyes. What I'm saying is that whatever happens tonight, he'll need you. If he loses, he'll need you to cheer him up. But if he wins... Wins? spluttered Alex. If he wins, he'll never come back. Then you'd better stop him, hadn't you? Hissed the snake. I reckon if you sprint, you might just get there in time. That's the end. See you later.